This is part of my, I don't know, it feels like a 20-year war on email as a corporate repository. The question is, when you make decisions or you have agreements or you do other things, you got to pass and disseminate information. What's the right path to disseminate information where the right people can see it, and where when new people join your group or that effort, they can pick it up, and that you have a place to go where you can understand those definitions. In a lot of cases, you're not going to have one of those, but I will tell you, I am so tired of people using email to store stuff. It like blows my mind, right? Now, we have a couple characteristics, right? It's got to be ubiquitous. We have to be able to easy to use. I put familiarity here. It should be ease of use. And then there's a question of, is it all the other characteristics that you see in the characteristics list on the left side, right? Will it persist? What's the retention for that? Will it be retained for enough period of time? Can we see the history of a discussion or the history of a decision or the history of a regulation? We don't need, a lot of times, super fine grain on that. But if changes were made and it turned out one of those was wrong, sometimes it would be nice to know when that happened. This isn't a blame thing. I wasn't involved in a corporate memory discussion a very long time ago. And the one person got very angry because they thought the reason we needed to keep corporate memory was so that they could defend any decision they made. And that's part of it, but there are a lot more optimistic ways to put that. And it needs to be discoverable. This is like one of my main gripes when people put stuff places. It's just not discoverable. And a lot of times you'll have multiple corporate repositories, and that makes it super hard because you end up, it's not discoverable from a single place. So in a large organization, you're going to have multiple of these anyway, and that's bad. We need to be able to rehost this data as we change tooling over time, and we'd like to retain any of the non-text or the text in the other parts of this. So that might be diagrams, it might be images, it might be PDFs, it might be anything like that. We need this thing to support staff turnover. This is another one of the things I really hate about people doing stuff in email, and it's because when everybody that was on that email leaves, the decision goes away because nobody's got access to it anymore. Man, that is the worst. And then accessibility and access control. We need the ability, another thing with email, you can forward it to anywhere and then everybody can see it. And sticky notes, I guess you can put them in your drawer, but like sticky notes, whiteboard, phone, hallway, I put those up there because that's actually how a lot of decisions are made. And if nobody captures that decision or the reason or the excitement or a promise anywhere, then it's bad. And so all those ones in red and purple, I'm going to argue, are lousy places for storing memory. So then the question is, what are the other options for storing memory? And I think the biggest two in the Microsoft world is SharePoint. In the technical world, I think it's Confluence or Wiki, like Wikipedia, right? Like your internal wiki. There are a lot of really cool things about that. There are some negative things about the wiki. SharePoint, some people like the app part of that. But you got to, what I've found is the discoverability in the wiki, a lot of times, at least as a nerd, tends to be better than in SharePoint. And I have the same access controls, and everybody knows how to use a wiki. So I have my biases there. I think they're both pretty familiar to people, and they both have pretty high, although I find search in SharePoint to be miserable. But that could be, I worked 2 places a while back that we did that. And we use Google Docs. Oh, I should put that in the final one of these. We did Google Docs one place I worked, and that was lousy. For discoverability, it was lousy for retention, but we had a anti-Microsoft, bent. And then you have shared drives, which is where we used to keep all these decisions and stuff. I always found those impossible to search. They were great for retention. They were highly usable, but man, they were, like stuff got lost and you had access control issues because it wasn't discoverable. You didn't know you needed access to it. A lot of people now that are engineers feel the documentation and decisions should be close to the code that they're writing. That would be like Git and other source code repositories. I find searching those pretty weak, and there's no global search a lot of times, so it makes it hard to search across repositories. And then the access controls tend to make the access to the documentation and the information be the same as it is to the code base, and that gets weird. It makes it where a lot of people don't have access to it. The last two, I've worked 2 places where we tried this. I would argue they're not ubiquitous, and but there are systems that are designed to make, like global search. I worked at a place and we had we still had SharePoint, and we had Google Docs. And we needed a way to search across, and Git, and we needed a way to search all across all 4 of those. And it's always this argument whether we have one system or more, and global search will actually give you, if you can implement a global search, that'll give you an option, kind of like your own internal Google or Bing or somebody else, right? And then the document manager, there's a lot of systems around that. They tend to be kind of restrictive. They're very disciplined. And at this point, I just want the ability to have a corporate memory repository. And if it's a little, and actually, wikis and SharePoint do a certain amount of discipline. If I don't even not convinced I care as much about the discipline around it. Well, I do, but it's just got to be super accessible, easy to use. And it's got to be able to last. A lot of times a document management system is a vendor system, and you don't renew the contract, and then you lose access to everything, right? So that's it for me, trying to keep it under around 5 minutes. The main point is corporate memory repositories. Where do you retain stuff? What are the criteria for that, and how do you make it discoverable? And I'm going to argue everything in the gray ellipse is, or oval, is not someplace you should be putting anything, and then you got to figure out which were the others or your own. You want to do that. Have a great day.